1744, the Pennsylvania frontier. One woodsman became legendary as he stalked the Pennsylvania wilderness in search of vengeance to the Indians that murdered his family. He was known as the Black Rifle, the Black Hunter, the Wild Hunter of the Juniata. This is the story of Captain Jack Armstrong.
It's difficult to discuss Jack Armstrong without first going back and discussing the climate of the Pennsylvania frontier at that time. This starts with the walking purchase. William Penn's sons, Thomas Penn and John Penn, became the proprietors of his land. Thomas Penn and John Penn plotted with their agent James Logan to acquire lands in central and northern Bucks County. Logan had already made an illegal individual purchase in 1726 to build the Durham iron furnace. To facilitate what became known as the walking purchase, James Logan found what he claimed to be a draft deed of an agreement between the Lenape Indians, who the settlers called the Delaware, that stated that they sold all land that a man could walk within a day and a half north of Wrightstown, Pennsylvania. On September 19, 1737, 3 settlers actually ran that distance instead of walking as agreed with the Indians. The Indians were shocked to see one of those settlers run 64 miles in a day and a half before he collapsed near Jim Thorpe, PA. The fraudulent walking purchase forced many Lenapes west to the Susquehanna and Ohio valleys in the 1740s and 1750s, as the proprietors sold lands in northern Bucks County and Lehigh Valley to speculators and immigrants. It is this point in time that the stories and legends of Captain Jack begin. It starts with him building a cabin on the Juniata River where him, his wife, and his children grew up. He was happy just hunting and fishing, trading with the local Indians. The story goes that one day in 1752, Captain Jack jumped into his canoe and started off upon the waters of the Blue Juniata. When he returned, he found that his family had been murdered by the brutal Indians and his cabin was in ruins. He kissed the cold lips he loved, then carried the bodies away and buried them in one grave. But he did more. He vowed that he would avenge the deed all the rest of his life. With an eye like an eagle's and an aim as sure as William tells, he killed every red man who came his way. There were many different documented writings that refer to Jack Armstrong around that time period. They referred to him as legendary names such as the Black Hunter, the Wild Hunter of Juniata, the Black Rifle. He became known as a savior to the settlers up there because he swore vengeance in a war against these Indians in the Juniata Valley. In Jones's Juniata Valley, we find a lengthy description of Captain Jack. He makes him a hunter living on the Juniata near a beautiful spring, having a mystery about him which no one ever succeeded in fathoming. He is described by Jones as a man of Herculean proportions with an extremely swarthy complexion and a relentless Indian tracker and killer. The settlers about Ogwick, now Shirleysburg, PA, in Huntingdon County, as well as those in Path Valley and along the Juniata, frequently found dead savages, some in a state of partial decay and others with their flesh stripped by bald eagles, on the spot where Jack's rifle had laid them low. So the story goes that in February of 1744, Jack Armstrong and his 2 companions, Smith and Woodward, traveled out to Mount Union. So the story told that Armstrong seized a horse of Musamelan and a rifle. The gun was taken by Armstrong's companion, James Smith. So as Captain Jack and his 2 companions were heading back down along the Juniata River through what's now known as Jack's Narrows, they passed Musamelan's cabin. Now Musamelan was out hunting at the time, so he didn't see them, but his wife was home, ran out and demanded that Jack return her husband's horse. But Jack told her, there's nothing I can do, I already traded to somebody else. And he continued on his way. Now, he was heading out west to do trading with Indians out in the Ohio area. So he ended up setting up camp for the night. Now, when Musamilin got home, his wife told him what just happened earlier that day, that he had Jack Armstrong pass by, wouldn't give back his horse. So Musamilin decided to round up 2 other younger Indians. And one of the stories says he told the younger Indians that he was just, they're just going to go out hunting, and asked them to go bear hunting with him. And they said, okay, they would. Now, Chief Shikellamy was kind of like the overseer. He was representative of the Iroquois nation, and he was living in present-day Sunbury. So he actually wrote about this account. Chief Shikellamy wrote, Musamilin owing some skins to John Armstrong. The said Armstrong seized a horse of the said Musamilin and a rifle. The gun was taken by James Smith. Sometime last winter, Musamilin met Armstrong on the River Juniata and paid all but 20 shillings, for which he offered a neck belt and pawn to Armstrong and demanded his horse, and John Armstrong refused it. He would not deliver the horse, but enlarged the debt, as his usual custom was. And after some quarrel, the Indian went away, in great anger, without his horse, to his hunting cabin. Shikellamy wrote that Musamilin and the 2 Indians followed Jack until he came to the path that leads to the Ohio. Then Musamilin told them that he had a good mind to go and fetch his horse back from Armstrong, and desired the 2 young men to come along. It was then almost night, and they traveled until next morning. Musamilin said, they are not far off. We will make ourselves black. Then they will be frightened and will deliver up the horse. And I will tell Jack that if he don't give me the horse, I will kill him. And when he said so, he laughed. The young men thought he joked as lie used to. They did not blacken themselves, but he did. When the sun was above the trees, or above an hour high, they all came to the fire, where they found James Smith sitting, and they also sat down. Musamilin immediately asked where Jack was. Smith told him he was down the road clearing a path for the next day. Musamilin walked off in that direction. Shikellamy wrote, after he had gone a little distance from the fire, he said something and looked back laughing. They being hungry, Smith told them to kill some turtles, of which there were many, and they would make some bread, and would all eat together. While they were talking, they heard a gun go off, at which time Woodworth Arnold was killed, as they later learned. Soon after, Musamilin came back and said, why did you not kill that white man, according as I bid you? I have laid the other 2 down. At this they were surprised, and one of the young men, commonly called Jimmy, ran away to the river. Musamilin said to the other, how will you do to kill Catawbas if you cannot kill white men, you cowards? Musamilin told him, I'll tell you how to do this. He picked up the English axe that was laying there, struck James Smith in the head 3 times until he finally died. Musamilin then told the young Indian to call the other, but he was so terrified he could not call. Musamilin then went and fetched him and said that the 2 of the white men were killed. He must go now and kill the 3rd. Then each of them would have killed one. But neither of them dared venture to talk anything about it. So Musamilin then started walking off, trying to find Jack Armstrong. The other 2 younger Indians followed behind, but with some distance. One Indian told the other, do not kill the white men. I didn't kill anybody. Let him do what he will. Eventually, they were slightly behind Musamilin, and they saw Jack Armstrong sitting on a log off in the distance. Chief Shikellamy wrote, Musamilin spoke to him and said, where's my horse? Armstrong made answer and said, he will come by and by. You shall have him. I want him now, said Musamilin. So Jack Armstrong actually asked Musamilin to come back to the fire, let them sit and talk, and he'll give him his horse back to him. So Musamilin told Jack to go ahead and walk in front of him. So Jack started walking when Musamilin lifted up his rifle and shot Jack in the back. But as the stories go, Jack was a very strong man. Years of traveling through the mountains of Pennsylvania toughened him up, and the shot did not kill him. So Musamilin then took his axe and scalped Jack, killing him there on the ground. So allegedly, Musamilin then talked the other two into dragging the bodies down the Juniata River and throwing them into the river. So one of the young Indians ended up traveling up to the giant village of Sunbury, which is then called Shamokin. Word started getting around. He started telling people. Eventually, there was a drunken Indian went into one of the houses and started spouting off about, Musamilin killed Jack Armstrong and his companions, and if somebody doesn't do something about it, I'll kill him myself, not so we don't anger our white friends. So this ended up getting back to Shikellami's son, who gave it back to Chief Shikellami and let him know what was going on. So Conrad Weiser was a translator at that time and worked with Chief Shikellami a lot up there to kind of be the intermediate and translator between negotiations of the colonies and the Indians at that time. There were several Indians sent up there to apprehend Musamilin, first find the bodies, then apprehend Musamilin. So Musamilin was brought back in and turned over to Thomas Cookson, who was a surveyor in Lancaster County. Musamilin ended up giving a confession to Cookson, which Cookson then wrote to the governor at the time. Thomas Cookson wrote to governor on 1744, "Honorable Sir, just now is brought to this place Musamilin, a Delaware Indian, who having confessed the murder of John Armstrong and Woodward Arnold, one of his men, and that John, a son, Neshalemi, another of the Delawares, killed James Smith, another of J. Armstrong's men." Professor Sung of Juniata College wrote a very detailed and fascinating breakdown of this entire incident called Death on the Juniata. This includes Thomas Cookson's statement that Musamilin gave him that actually details the event from a different perspective, which shows that Musamilin was claiming self-defense. Thomas Cookson wrote that Musamilin said, "Some hot words arose upon this. Armstrong took up a stake and struck him, on which he struck Armstrong with his tomahawk on the temple, and he dropped dead on the spot. Arnold, one of Armstrong's men, attempted to make a blow at Musamilin with an axe, but he retired to his gun, where he had lodged it already loaded, and shot him, and afterwards wounded him in the head with his tomahawk. Neshalini's son, with his tomahawk, killed James Smith, after which they buried Armstrong and threw the bodies of the other two into the Chinioto Creek." In Lancaster on June 28, 1744, then Governor George Thomas informed the Iroquois that, "By our laws, all the accessories to murder are to be tried and put to death, as well as the person who gave the deadly wound. We therefore expect you will make the most effectual measures to seize and deliver up to us the other two Indians present at these murders, and to be tried with the principal now in custody." So about 7 weeks later, both John and Jimmy arrived in Philadelphia to stand before Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Governor Thomas later announced that the Chief Justice reports to me that for anything which appears in their examination, they were not concerned in any of the murders. 41, on the other hand, the court found Musamilin guilty after a trial on October. On November 15, 1744, the Pennsylvania Journal announced, "Yesterday, the Indian who killed Armstrong and his men was hanged."